Hello, welcome to episode 42 of the Edgar Rice Burroughs podcast, where we celebrate the works of the greatest adventure writer of the 20th century. My name is Tim DeForest. I'm an author myself and a blogger and a booktuber now, which I'll be explaining in a moment. And I have my two co-hosts with me. Jess, go ahead.
My name is Jess Terrell, and if that name sounds familiar, you probably have visited for the love of all things Edgar Rice Burroughs. That's a Facebook discussion group that I look after, and it's open pretty near 24/7. I invite you all to come over and look at the post and read the information and then learn what you can there about Edgar Rice Burroughs. For the love of all things Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Scott Stewart, glad to be here. I appreciate the guys. Some of you know I've been out of commission for a while, certain health issues. Anyway, we're back up and running. I appreciate to be back running with the posse here, the ERB posse, and for what I'm currently doing, ghostwriting, editing, and writing my own projects. So looking forward to our discussion tonight.
Yes, and of course, Scott having health problems is, of course, the cover story. The three of us were called to Pellucidor for a secret mission under the for David Innes, and I'm afraid we're not allowed to give any of the details of that. And it just took us a while, and I was able to post a little bit while in Pellucidor, but you have terrible Wi-Fi there, which after all these years, you'd think they would have figured that out. But we're back now. So, and I
I
just
thought that's
appreciate,
supposed to be a secret.
well, I'm not giving any details.
Okay.
Tell about the Grilly Wave.
Yeah. So, yeah, somebody's got to talk to Jason Gridley about getting Wi-Fi attached to the Gridley Wave. Um, okay. And we will be talking tonight about the novel The Moon Maid, the first in a trilogy. And it was like 1924 it was serialized, and 19 um and then later published as a book, and then it was followed by The Moon Men and then Red Hawk, both of which we'll be talking about in future episodes. And before that, yes, I hear the apes of Kershak telling us it's time for our special features. And our first special feature is our trivia question. We were recording this on October 20th, 2025, and I hope to have it posted within a day or two after that. So the deadline for answering the trivia question I'm going to ask will be um, uh, November 10th. Send in a correct answer to this trivia question through our email, edgarsmailbag@gmail.com. That will be in the show notes. That's the only way you can answer the question to be in the running for the prize. If you post it on social media or anything like that, it doesn't count. You have to send it in via via the Gmail address. And if I will be randomly picking one person from amongst the right answers, and that person will be getting an authorized library edition copy of Tarzan and the Castaways with the awesome Joe Jusko cover that he's been doing for that series. I mean, you can literally say every cover he's done is breathtaking. Um, and just and he's done several for how many of the Barsooms are out? Three so far, I think. And so he's doing wonderful covers
Yeah,
for
I
that.
believe. Yeah.
So yeah, so if you're the winner of the trivia contest, if you send in a correct answer and it gets randomly chosen from other correct answers, then you will win a copy of Tarzan and the Castaways. Now here is the question. During the mutiny aboard the Fuwalda, who saves John Clayton's life? Once more, during the mutiny aboard the Fuwalda, who saves John Clayton's wife? John Clayton's life. Actually, he saves his wife also. So if you know the answer to that, send it to edgarsmailbag@gmail.com, and you will be in the running to win the trivia contest and get a copy of Tarzan and the Castaways. So just get that in before November 10th. And then one other thing, bear with me, guys, because this wasn't in the outline I sent you. I just thought of it. While we were on hiatus, I was doing these what I read each month videos, which I've enjoyed enormously. And I don't we don't get huge numbers with those, which is fine. I've built up a small audience with those and gotten some nice comments, and a few people have asked me to keep doing it. So I'm going to be breaking that off. So on YouTube, it's on a different playlist from these podcasts, so that you won't, if you don't care about my booktube videos, you don't have to go through them to try and find the episodes of the podcast. They'll be on a completely different playlist. So that'll become a different thing than the podcast. But I've been enjoying doing them. I've been doing every month. I've been doing a what I read this month and get to talk about the books I've read. And I'm enough of a nerdy book reader to where the opportunity to do that is just enjoyable. And I'm perfectly happy to continue doing it for the small audience I have. I know there's at least one crossover between someone who's a fan of the podcast, who's said they are now a fan of my booktube videos, and thank you for that. And I will continue to produce them. And that's it for our special features. We are moving on now to talking about the Moon Maid, which has an interesting publication history. Not long after World War I ended, and the Treaty of Versailles was signed in June of 1919, Edgar Rice Burroughs started a story called Under the Red Flag, because he was really bothered by the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. And he wanted to write something condemning communism, something he would end up doing in several stories. He did it in the Pirates of Venus, through like the metaphor, with the villains in that were a metaphor for communists. And the villains in The Moon Maid are the same thing. But he couldn't find a buyer for that now. The publishers told him everybody was sick of war, just leave that alone and give us more Tarzan. So he returned to it later on. He began writing The Moon Maid in June 1922. In this case, the communists were the Kalgors, the villains on the moon. And he puts in all this cool stuff: the underground world on the moon, space flight, strange societies, strange creatures, all of that made him such a wonderful science fiction writer. It was published in serial form in 1923, and published in book form in 1924. So that's the book we'll be talking about, the first of them. And our episodes following this, we will do an episode on the Moon Men, and then an episode on Red Hawk, following the future history that Burroughs creates for these stories. And really, this is just wonderful science fiction, as well as a great adventure story. And any preliminary comments from you guys before we dive into the chapter by chapter discussion?
Oh, this is a favorite of mine. I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had not read this since I was a teenager. I actually felt like I was reading it the first time because I'd forgotten so much of it. And this one just unintentionally got onto the back burner for me, and I hadn't returned to it for literally decades. So the Moon Maid starts with a prologue. It's called "The Message from Mars," and somebody on a ship meets a guy named Julian, and it's like a flight from New York to Paris or something on an airship of some sort. And we find out that in this universe, the World War I, or it was actually the only war, they didn't have a World War II. They just had one war that went from 1914 to 1967. And Western civilization has come up on top, and everybody's thrown all their weapons away, which I think will come back to bite them in a later book. And they have what they think is world peace. And the person narrating the first story, usually we assume this is Burroughs, but this is some sort of alternate reality, so we don't know who this guy is. And if you just, I don't know if that showed up, if you just heard a Star Trek intercom sound, that was my phone. I just turned the sound off on it. So it's 1967 in this universe, and Julian has a story to tell. He is someone who is continually reincarnated every other generation, I think it was, and he has a memory of something that happened to his future self, and that's the story we're going to tell. So starting in chapter 1, The book is the first person narration by Julian, as he recounts an adventure that hasn't happened to him yet. Um, and one thing I wanted to talk about here was this is the second time I think that we have what has to be an alternate universe within the Edgar Rice Burroughs universe, as defined by just the original books by him. Because in the Lost Continent, World War I went on forever until America just cut itself off from the rest of the world. And in this case, World War I goes on for over 50 years, but then you have world peace, and America's not a separate entity. So they're two different alternate histories, but they're definitely not the same universe as where all the Tarzan and other stories take place in. The history is too different. You know, we know in Tarzan novels, they had World War I when it happened in real life, and they had World War II when it happened in real life. So, so this is definitely a different universe, which is fine. I think any science fiction fan who can't grasp the concept of alternate universes needs to go back to kindergarten. But any comments from you guys?
I can't top the kindergarten comments, so
So,
I agree with you. I mean, it's not that hard, and certainly you see it in modern day science fiction on television and plenty of books. It's almost a common occurrence.
yeah, the first alternate history story is considered to be Murray Leinster's Sideways in Time from, I think it was 1936. It was the mid 30s anyway. But it's been done a zillion times. Star Trek did it with their Mirror Mirror, the evil Spock with the beard.
Yep.
One of their best episodes, I think. And it's been done, yeah, it's been done a zillion times where often they have evil versions of the good characters in the alternate universe. Hercules, the Legendary Journey did it, where Hercules in the alternate universe was a evil emperor. So
I think one of the neat strengths about this kind of science fiction that we're describing about the alternate worlds is you can address the question of, well, what if we did this instead of that? So you're a writer or whatever you are, and you're designing this fictional world. So instead of having I don't know, instead of having green cars, you have blue cars or something like that. That's not a good example, but how does that change society? All right, that's all I have. Go ahead.
That I hope I have the name right. Harry Harrison. I think he does alternate timelines in some of his novels too, science fiction ones. I can't remember exact titles, like East to West or whatever.
He very well did. He wrote so much science fiction that I've read a lot of his stuff. I don't remember an alternate universe, but I can't believe he didn't do it. Oh, he did. The Eden was in each title, a trilogy.
That's
right.
it. It's
where dinosaurs survived.
of
Dinosaurs survived and became intelligent, and then humans showed up, and you had a human intelligent dinosaur war.
That's the one. Those are the books.
Yes,
I think there are three of them.
So he did an alternate history one. Harry Turtledove does a lot. He did Guns of the South, where white supremacist South Africans bring 100,000 AK-47s back to Lee's army. He did one where aliens invade during World War II, and so on and so forth. So it's a very common thing, and Burroughs actually predates most of those. And he didn't worry about identifying it as an alternate universe. He might not even have thought of that at the time, but it's clearly an alternate universe from the regular ERB universe because it's just got a major difference in history. So
made me think too. I think it's in the Cave Girl. Don't they talk about reincarnation? He does in some of the books, and there's kind of a thing when we go off with Philip Jose Farmer too about Tarzan doing the whole cycle, going through a large part of Earth's history. One of the things that popped up in my mind, this isn't necessarily time jumping, which you kind of seen some of that in the new dimension or time jumping in the new ERB universe of the books that are being sanctioned coming out. But it reminded me a little bit when talking about the different Julians Slaughterhouse-Five, where the main character there is
Mm.
doing time jumps, but there he's aware he's always physically the same person.
Yeah.
But it made me
Well,
think a little bit of that too.
well, there are authors like Robert E. Howard did several adventure stories of people remembering past lives, and then you'd go in and have his memory would be the main adventure of the story. You know, here's this prehistoric guy fighting a giant worm. Here's this Viking in one, and so on and so forth. Um, Burroughs does something I can't recall if anybody else ever did it, where somebody's remembering a future life. You know, usually when you have stories where reincarnation is a real thing, the people are remembering their past life. You know, I remember when I was Napoleon's chamber pot butler or whatever. You know, but this is the only time I can think of where you're remembering a future life, and that's really kind of a fun twist on it.
That's
And
what I think made me think of Slaughterhouse-Five, the time
Hmm.
jumps
Yeah,
between planets and back and
yeah,
forth.
because
Yeah.
he was going all over the place, wasn't he? So yeah.
Yes.
and when you mentioned that about the future reincarnation,
Hmm.
a question occurred to me that I had not considered before. Does this Julian, who has a future reincarnation, he's aware of it, he seems to know the details about it,
Hmm.
when he actually lives, and he hasn't lived this reincarnation yet, but when he does he know what's going to happen tomorrow? Does he know what's going to happen the next day, or is his memory wiped clean? And
Um,
it's because just in case he uses the red crayon instead of the blue crayon,
hmm.
one life versus another life, or reincarnation versus another, that could make a small difference.
Yeah. But apparently in this case, when he becomes Julian 5 in the future, he does not remember that because otherwise he would have shot Orthus right away.
Yeah,
You
that's the
know,
Yes.
thing to do. Let's
yeah,
go get him, fix this right
yeah.
now.
In fact, he says at one point, you know, when I forgave Orthus and let him come back on the crew, I wish I'd shot him right there. You know, it was
You're
kind of a
right.
kind of
Yes.
foreshadowing. And if he'd remembered it, Orthus would have come and said, "Can I be forgiven?" No, bang. You know, and then you wouldn't have had much of an adventure, but but it would have been what he did.
I'm fine, thanks. We're recording it like this now.
Mm.
No, you're not bothering me. Everything's fine.
Um, okay, Scott, any more comments on the prologue or?
Yeah, I do, but I think they're better reserved for after chapter 1 and 2.
Okay. So, well, chapter one, Julian's telling the future, telling what happens in the future. We eventually contact Mars, and it is Barsoom. Although if this is an alternate universe, it's not necessarily the same Barsoom, but they have a John Carter on there. It takes them a while to figure out how to communicate because apparently there's just some side comment about there being politics involved, and they didn't go to John Carter right away just to translate things into English for them. But eventually they get contact and they build a ship to travel to Mars. And the ship is designed by Lieutenant Commander Orthus, who who has had a less than ethical career and has clashed with Julian before. But Julian's the commander of the ship. There's three other crewmen, Wes, Jay, and Ensign Norton, and then there's Orthus is like the chief engineer or something. Um, they launch on Christmas Day 2025. So we are coming up in real life on the anniversary of this alternate universe trip to Barsoom. And we need to remember that and celebrate it, by golly. Um, and because how do you celebrate something happens on the exact same day, but it's in another universe? You can't do a Memorial Day.
Well,
Um,
excuse me, in my discussion group for the love of all things Edgar Rice Burroughs, we do acknowledge Mars Day, which
okay.
Julian is talking about with I think probably the protagonist of the story.
Okay.
And we do posting. That's all we do.
Hmm.
I don't think if answers your question, but I mean it does get celebrated.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, they take off and things go well at first, but while they're passing the moon, they notice what seems to be life on the moon. Um, and then Orthus gets drunk and um, um, you know, when Julian tells Orthus to apologize or he'll be put in irons, what Orthus does instead is sabotage the engines. Um, so That's chapter one. It ends with the sabotage of the ship, which is called the Barsoom, by the way. And as I said, John Carter is mentioned. They eventually contact him when they're in contact with Barsoom. So if this is an alternate universe, then there's an alternate version of Barsoom with an alternate version of John Carter, unless John Carter can skip from reality to reality. Um, in the ERB expanded universe that the ERB Incorporated is doing, Barsoom, it literally is another dimension, which is why Mars doesn't appear to be Barsoom to us on Earth. When you travel there, you cross into another dimension. So maybe this is the same Barsoom existing in different. Who knows?
Well,
Anyway, yeah.
if I may,
Mhm.
it's all up to the caretakers of these stories. But
Mhm.
in my opinion, you could have multiple Barsooms, or you could have
Yeah.
one Barsoom, and
Hmm.
you could have John Carter. Let's say you could have John Carter living on Barsoom,
Hmm.
and when he goes to visit Earth, he passes through some kind of a portal that switches that. It's like changing trains at the train
Hmm.
station.
Yeah.
So he switches him to another Earth that is, let's say, the original Earth, as opposed to a separate Earth where you have these, heck, the Beyond 30 universe and that sort of thing.
Hmm. On the other hand, if this is a different Barsoom from the one in the in Burroughs's novels,
Mhm.
and it all could be the same John Carter. Do you remember that Star Trek Next Generation episode where Worf was being tossed from one alternate universe to the other, and at
Oh
first he
yeah,
didn't notice because they
right.
were close to the same. Uh, so that could be what's happening to John Carter. He wakes up with a different Jesus Thoris each day, and the differences are so minor that he never notices.
The
Good
So.
point.
differences, though, I think probably it could be, if you want to call it different universe or dimension, because the time is not parallel between his time on Barsoom and his time on Earth.
Yeah.
The same passage of days and years and aging and all that doesn't happen. And if you mentioned it, I missed it earlier. It might be good to note that the Martians, Mars, Barsoom, had been trying to reach and connect with Earth for a number of years before we did. And a
Hmm.
lot of this is a response into successfully receiving their messages. And then when they tried to send a spaceship to us, which became
Hmm.
lost in space,
Yeah.
this ship was made in reference to that to try and regain the momentum of
Hmm.
them trading their civilizations and stuff.
Okay. Now, an argument for this being a different Barsoom is in the regular ERB universe, we made contact with Mars via the Gridley wave fairly early on. So in this universe, it took them decades beyond that. And Jason's never mentioned. Maybe that version of him got killed in the 50-year World War.
Oh, that's a very
Uh,
good point.
mhm.
Very good point.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and I suspect ERB had just such a vivid imagination. I suspect he wasn't worried about the alternate universe theories. This was just the setting for the story he wanted to tell. But he could have been because he certainly had the imaginative capacity to come up with all of this. So who knows? Um,
I got one more here. I'll toss out real quick,
okay.
if I may. The Tarzan's Africa.
Hmm.
In my opinion, and I don't have anything to base this on, it just is me overthinking things as I often do.
Hmm.
I believe that Tarzan, because he's all these lost cities,
Yeah.
and they can't. No one's ever flown in a plane and said, "Hey, that's Opar down there. Wonder what that is." That sort of thing. That has not occurred. And of course, there could be foliage and those kinds of things. But in my opinion, Tarzan goes through a portal
Hmm.
before he gets into one of these lost cities. Opar being one. There's gee was half a dozen lost cities at the very least. So he goes through the portal. He doesn't realize it. He goes in there. He has his adventure. And then when he leaves, he passes the portal back the other direction. He's back in our Earth, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think that's a great theory. Um, I have this like section of my brain where I've selected all the fictional universes that I'm going to think of as real. And so, since that includes the Edgar Rice Burroughs universe, it
Mhm.
also includes the Shadow and Doc Savage and with Skull Island and the Valley of Guanji, and
Sure.
Turok and Andor. Um, where in my universe, those cities are just there. That's what Africa is like in real life.
Mhm.
And but I don't care what the astronomers say. Mars is actually Barsoom.
Yeah.
That's what it's like in my mind, where I like to think all of these places is real.
Mhm.
But an alternate way of doing it is that he goes through portals, and I think that's an awesome theory as well. So they both fit. They're both fun in their own ways, I think. So, okay. Anything else on chapter one?
Not for me.
Okay, so chapter two, he's broken the engines, and that reminds me of a question I had for chapter one. Shouldn't the crew have been cross-trained in this stuff? We later find out that Ensign Norton hangs out with Orthus so much so he could learn about the engines, and he's the one who fixes them at the end.
Right.
So just Julian was worried about how much Norton was associating with this scuzzbag, but it turns out Norton was actually learning the engines and was awesome and learned how to fix them. But
Mhm.
when they before they took off, knowing that it was a dangerous mission, shouldn't like they all have been cross-trained in various specialties, and somebody would have, let's at least look at the manual and see if we can figure this engine out.
Well, that's a very good point. Yes, they
Yeah.
all do cross training. In the real world, they have overlaps in their
Hmm.
assignments, so that they're not up a tree, so to speak.
Yeah.
If the guy who handles the dishwasher suddenly is not available to do that.
Hmm.
Before, having like NASA and our modern strategic forces, when you look back, Conan Doyle's Lost World and
Hmm.
she, those each person seemed to have their specialty in the groups. That was kind of a Victorian or turn of the century thing. Is you brought together a person with each specialty, kind of like
Yeah.
now when we see Justice League or X-Men, they all have special powers, and together as a group they use them, but hopefully none of them are evil.
Yeah, but they all know how to fly the Blackbird, their big plane.
Yeah.
So they do have cross training in some stuff.
Hmm.
So it Kirk once went up in a Jeffries tube to repair something when Scotty wasn't on the ship. So he just wasn't as good at it as Scotty. So you would have thought, what the hey, we weren't there to plan the mission. We're being armchair quarterbacks, sort of. But for heaven's sakes, cross train your people, So, but
Even
anyway,
Scotty would man the helm sometimes.
yeah, he would. Yeah. Uhura was in the navigator spot in one episode because the
Yes, she
navigator got
was.
killed. Yeah, so
Exactly right.
something was going on, and they needed her to take over that spot. She knew how to do it.
And she could
So
still open hailing frequencies from
she
down
could, she
there.
could.
I have
Uh,
a question if we're done with that.
mhm,
Um, do we know now? It escapes me. I'm sorry.
mhm.
Please proceed.
Okay. Well, in chapter two, they put Orthos, the drunken Orthos, in irons, and the ship's falling towards the moon, and they seem doomed. Um, they discover he's destroyed the auxiliary engines, the radio. He's leaked out. They have like an eighth ray for getting to Mars, which it was mentioned in the Barsoom novels. And that's leaking out, so that's their method of propulsion. So basically, they're leaking fuel. Um, and they um, go down into a crater on Mars, which takes them inside the moon, which is a hollow sphere. And of course, you can't help but think about Pellucidor. And there is some luminosity coming from somewhere. Turns out that light from the sun will come down different openings, different craters, and that light will change a little, which is why I think you have people who aren't functionally uh, immortal, like on Pellucidor, where they age very slowly because you can't tell the passing of time. Inside the moon, because you have the shifting light, and it would happen on a regular basis as the moon rotates. It means you do have a passage of time. Burroughs doesn't dwell on this at all, but I was thinking about that when they first went down in there. Does this mean that there's no time and that people don't age, or at least age very slowly? But no, there is time. They even mention that the human race in there has come up with a way of telling time based on the changing of light. Um, and they find pressure and atmosphere similar to Earth. They land on the moon. It's January 8th, 2026. So that's Burroughs' Moon Day. Um, and they see, outside there's strange plants and some strange small animals and all of that. Um, so we'll be coming up on the day that we landed on the moon in this alternate universe soon. So the setup is similar to Pellucidor, but not exactly the same. Any comments on you guys from chapter two?
Well, the question I was going to pose a moment ago, which slipped my mind, it applies, I think, more or less to the entire book. Do we know why? And if this is a spoiler or something, then just tell me. We'll cover this later. Do we know why Arthas behaves the way he behaves? Do we know why he's such a god awful villain
Well,
almost from
he
day one?
was he was vindictive towards Julian because Julian had called him out on some of the unethical stuff he had done in years past.
Okay.
So part of it was just blind revenge while he was drunk. Later on, when he shows up again, it's going to be blind ambition and a willingness to like slaughter entire civilizations to put
Yeah.
himself in charge.
Yeah. I mean,
You know,
getting drunk and being upset's one thing.
yeah.
Destroying entire civilizations, that's a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Well, he's going to be not just vindictive, which was his motivation at the beginning,
Right.
and not rational vindictiveness because he's putting himself, he's stranding himself on the moon as well.
Right.
But he was too drunk to care.
Right.
Later on, it's just I can build grenades and put myself in charge of the Calgars and conquer the planet and be an emperor. So after that, it's just greed and ambition.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I think he probably hits every single deadly sin along the way because he lusts after the Moon Maid too. So I think he covers just about all of them by the time the book is over.
All right. Great. Great answer.
Mm,
Thank you.
And
yeah.
there is some background history on Orpheus too, talking about him growing up always, that he was always gifted, but never seemed to, you know, be in the winner's circle. It might be the best horse in the Kentucky Derby, but he never got put the wreath around his neck.
Hmm.
And so he seems to be bitter from that his whole, because they said his attitude and his brilliantness cut him off from other people. The other people just didn't like him. So it's been a lifelong trait. This is the type of person he is, where
Hmm.
he was born and raised up, and he is a little self-righteous and also feels he is more deserving
Yeah.
uh, than he's ever been
And a
awarded.
Yeah, and a tragic figure in a way too, not to excuse his evil, but he was a brilliant engineer. He built these engines to get to another planet. He could have been famous just for that if he'd been satisfied with that, but it wasn't enough for his ego. He reminds me, it's like Benedict Arnold, who was a brilliant soldier and saved the revolution at least twice from his leadership and his courage. But he was also a monumental egotist, and he was never felt he got the credit he deserved, and drove him to turn traitor at the end. Um, 'cause he never wiped out a civilization, so I can't compare him completely to Orthos, but it's the same sort of character arc. Somebody who has a legitimate talent at which they can be completely successful, but is embittered because nobody thinks they're as cool as they think they are.
They're jealous of the other guy.
Yeah. Hmm.
Up through this point, through the prologue and first two chapters, I was having a really hard time getting it. It's been years since I've opened up this book, but getting into it. Maybe that's because my brain's been a little foggy and I lost some gray matter this year. But the up through here, there's again a lot of the traditional and strengths of Burroughs, his descriptions and narrative. But sometimes it seemed like he's repeating himself or drawing it out almost to fill up some of the space. And maybe that's because this was brought over from the idea of the original book that I want to make as
Hmm.
a political diatribe or whatever,
Yeah.
But though that changed with chapter three, but I found the first, 30, 40 pages or whatever, a little difficult going for me this summer reading through it, but it all popped up and started getting good with the next chapter.
Hmm.
I was to address your issue there. I would suggest just thinking about all the terrible things Arthas can do to you may make you a little more alert while
Yeah,
reading this.
Yeah.
yeah, I've got
Uh,
a comment for him after the next chapter.
okay.
Okay.
Well, chapter three, Animals Are Men. That we get a description of the plant and some of the small animal life they see. They discuss in a scene that I think is kind of reminiscent to John Carter when he first arrived on Mars and didn't realize the effect of the low gravity and jumped. The same things happen to these guys. Julian and some of his other crew go out and they do these like they inadvertently make these huge jumps because of the reduced gravity. Because the gravity here would be even less than on Mars. Um, and they do some short um, excursions to explore, but they never go too far from the ship. And in the meantime, Orthos is asked for another chance. And Julian paroles him and says, okay, we'll give you another chance. And we get some foreshadowing there when Julian says, geez, if I knew what was going to happen, I would have shot him right there. We kind of know that Orthos is going to turn out to be rotten again, no matter what. But at first, he seems to be doing okay. He and Julian go on a expedition to explore around. They cross a river and they see these small horse-like animals with human-like faces. And some of these creatures gallop up and stop about 50 feet from them, and that's the end of chapter 3. We're starting to get to where we're going to meet the Vagas. And that's chapter 3. And like I said, I kind of like the spot where they have trouble with the gravity for a little bit, just like John Carter did on Mars. It's kind of a nice consistency there. So he Burroughs is kind of mixing some ideas from Pellucidor in with some ideas from his Barsoom books and making a unique world out of that with some aspects of both. So, any comments from you guys?
This world building, world building.
Yeah. Oh, his world building is always exceptional, and this is one of his better ones in the end, I think. So,
I got to call Julian on this.
uh,
He'd be the right age. Does he not remember Dr. Smith in Lost in Space or that chump on a Land of the Giants? I
mhm.
mean, dude, come on. Even when I was 6 or 7, I knew those two guys in those two shows needed to be gone.
But of course, Dr. Smith is such a bizarre example because the actor Jonathan Harris wanted his role to continue, so he started gradually making Smith goofy rather than evil. And
Yeah,
Irwin Allen said, I remember the quote. Irwin Allen said, I can see what you're doing. Keep doing it. And then it became the Dr. Smith and Robot and Will show and became
yeah. Guy Williams was not happy
yeah,
about
he was
that.
not, and it was much sillier. I'm a fan of Lost in Space, and I like
Yeah,
even when it's silly, I like that for what it was. But those early episodes where Smith was evil and they were trying to do serious science fiction, those I think
yeah,
are the best episodes.
absolutely.
So Smith and Orthos don't completely parallel. Smith
No,
was
no,
Smith
but
did try to murder the entire family, yes, but later on he became a goofy clown.
hey, it's
Um,
only a family.
Yes.
I have two words for this:
Uh-huh.
the carrot episode,
Oh, good heavens.
and that's
No,
all I'm going to say.
we shall never speak of the carrot episode again. It's like the hippie episode on Star Trek. Just don't talk about it.
Ring on my own.
Oh,
Damn it.
apparently several of the actors got into trouble with Earl and Allen because they couldn't stop breaking into laughter while doing the carrot episode because it was just so
I didn't
absurd.
know that. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised, but I didn't know it.
hmm Um, so yeah, that's the actor who played the carrot later played a lobster man on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. So
Oh
it,
yeah.
it was like I'm gonna go work for Irwin Allen. I wonder what dumb costume he's gonna put me in this time.
That's another one that went from super serious black and white
Yes.
espionage to
It
Yeah.
was like,
and I love the crazy stuff in it too. But
Mhm.
the one thing about compared to Land of Giants or Lost in Space, no one on the sub was ever a perpetual uh, misdeeder.
No.
Their adversaries almost always came from outside the submarine.
hmm Yeah.
what about Fitzhugh? Was he a villain? Fitzhugh?
From Land of the Giants?
Yes.
He was more, I don't think he was an outright villain the way Smith was at first. I think
Okay.
he was just a little bit cowardly, but he also proved himself to be a good person sometimes, didn't he?
Okay. I mean,
I
I've not
Yeah,
seen all
I
those
didn't like
episodes.
him.
yeah.
explains it.
Well, he had the general like you can't trust me ambiance about him,
Yeah.
but I think he actually helped to save the kid a couple of times. So, but it's been years since I've seen most of those episodes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Um. Okay, are we ready to go on to chapter 4?
That-
Yeah.
Okay. More of the creatures, the Vagas, appear. They do have weapons. They're four-footed, but their forefoots, their front 2 feet. I have no idea how to properly phrase that. I have hands, and they can
Hmm.
rear up and use weapons and tools
Hmm.
with their forelegs.
Hmm.
Um, and they're threatening Julian and Orthos, who eventually decide they have to open fire on them. Um, they would make terrible first contact people on Star Trek. They really would. And, they eventually, more of the Vagas appear, um, and they're eventually captured. They also notice that whenever a Vagas is just wounded, the other Vagas, even though they're apparently the same tribe, will cut the throat of that person. And then they become just meat. So they do eat other Vagas, including members of their own tribe. They're pretty savage. Um, and the Julian and Orthos are taken to the leader's hut back at their village, but language is a barrier. Um, now they're so the Vagas, I think Burroughs really admired Native American culture, and I think he uses, even though the Vagas are a pretty brutal race, I think he based them on Native Americans to an extent. They really have that vibe to them, at least I think. Did it seem that way to you guys? He was basing them on American Indians?
I have not know. I'm not disputing you, but I have not noticed that from
Okay.
my perspective.
Um, and that's and I also well another thing I wanted to mention was the Vagas as they're definitely described as having 4 legs, with their 2 front legs being having usable hands on them. But a lot of the illustrations, including Frazetta's Ace paperback cover and Roy
Hmm.
Krinkle's cover and all that, show them more like centaurs with arms.
Right.
So does it seem like Burroughs' description of them, it's awesome in the books and it works perfectly there. But if you try and do an illustration of it, did the illustrators think it looked a little silly and they
Well,
needed to give them arms?
I will say you could be right. I will say that the centaur is more handsome or romantic looking
Mm-hmm.
than the Vagas. The Vagas have human-like faces, and that's a little
Yeah,
unsettling to look at something that is about the size of a dog or bigger perhaps, and he's standing there with a spear in one of his hands, and he's got his other 3 feet on the ground, and he looks like a human being, and he's eyeing you to see if you'd be pretty tasty today,
yeah.
as opposed to the centaur on what amounts to a gallant horse, and you're running through the neighborhood or the forest or whatever. And that's almost a pleasant thought on a wild
Mm-hmm.
horse ride on a moonlit night. But I'm glad you mentioned that because that's one of my sticking points is that the Vaga is not a centaur. Sure, I love the artwork as much as everyone else, but Burroughs did not describe a centaur.
Yeah. And
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and also the Vaga, as you pointed out, they can carry a spear in one of their hands and launch the thing.
Mm-hmm.
They can stand on their hind legs and
Mm-hmm.
and throw a spear that way, or even run on their hind legs if they choose to.
Yeah.
They can do it on all fours.
And artists like Krenkel and Frazetta, especially, were usually very careful to
Hmm.
faithfully depict what
Hmm.
was in the books. But
Hmm.
Frazetta must have consciously, for instance, he was doing that Ace cover. He
Hmm.
must have consciously decided to give him arms and to go with the centaur look.
I think
Um,
I think you may be right. I mean,
yeah, he,
Frazetta was a brilliant talent, no question
yeah,
about it. But I'm guessing he figured, and maybe some of these other artists too, that
mm,
I've got this Vaga thing over here, and I've
mm,
got a centaur over here, and the
mm,
general public is better acquainted with and will admire the centaur more than the Vaga. It's going to be a
yeah.
bigger seller.
It would have also be tricky for an illustrator to figure out the anatomy of the Vagas. They're on four legs, but they're still carrying weapons and rearing up and using the weapons, but then going down on four legs and be able to run like a horse again.
Mhm.
The anatomy doesn't follow any rational animal. And once again, it's not a criticism of how they're described in Burroughs's book. I think they're dangerous and creepy in the book, the way they should be.
Right,
But
right.
I think it might be really tricky for an illustrator to portray the Vagos that way without them looking silly in an illustration.
Well, right. You
And
don't want it to look silly. I agree
yeah,
with
so they might have decided, well, we're going to be inaccurate and make them centaurs so that they look cool and dangerous, because we can't do that with the way Burroughs described them.
you. Another thing about the Vaga, and I really picked up on this when I was reading Swords Against the Moon Maid by Chris Carey, which came along after the Burroughs stories, of course. But the Vagas are meat eaters, and there's
Hmm.
not a whole broad. There is not a wide range of choices for food up on the moon. They've got about half a dozen things they can have. That's about it. But the Vagas they like to eat like everybody else does, and they're meat eaters. They'll eat their own kind, and on a sparse day without much food, if they're working with a human, they may be eyeing that human and say, "I bet he tastes pretty good."
Yeah. No, they're definitely creepy bad guys. There's a sense that you're in danger whenever you're around Vagos,
I agree.
with
You got to keep
which
an eye
is
on them.
yeah, which is what Burroughs did on purpose. Um, so any other comments on chapter 4 before we go on?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe the way to look at the anatomical structure of a Vagas might be kind of crossing the body of a horse with an ape, with the ape
Mm,
having the broader shoulders and the longer arms than legs, walking on their knuckles or hands
mm,
and jumping like that. If you could somehow make a horse-like body, but with the front end, shorter back end and front end, so they could carry arrows or stuff like that, and they'd have that front power for pushing themselves along.
That's
hmm
not bad. That's
Yes,
that's
yeah,
kind of
that
good.
could work. So,
And then the other thing was about the nature of the Vagas. I didn't really come up with First Tribes or Native Americans either. What remind me is some of the Tarzan stories of John Carter, some of Burroughs' other novels, like in the South Pacific Islands and stuff.
mm,
He has some tribes and he has some civilizations that are really barbaric and
mm.
brutal, and that's what made the introduction of these and their cannibalistic ways make me think back to some of those other stories.
I can see that.
Good point.
So, okay, chapter 5, Out of the Storm. Julian and Orthus learn the language. Apparently, it takes some work because apparently the words are very similar, and it depends on what pitch you give them. It's kind of like a singing language almost. Um, well, and Julian tries to explain to the leader of the tribe the sun and how the planets work. That's not really believed. He does tell the guy that human flesh is poisonous, and since they're not sure whether he's telling the truth or not, that at least keeps them from being eaten for a while. And the chief Gava Go wants to be taken to Earth because there's lots of people there to eat. Um, and eventually, the chief of the tribe starts spending more time with Orthos without Julian being around. And that's if you know how Burroughs constructs stories, that's a tell that something with Orthos is going to go wrong. Um, and we find out that the tribe, the Novans is what they're called, is nomadic. They move around. We get the description of a storm. Storms on the interior of the moon are very, very violent, and the Novans are terrified when that takes place. They take shelter in a forest. And the chapter ends with like a human bird-like creature, a human-like bird creature seen in the sky, and it descends, and the Vagos tear its wings off and bring it to the chief. And it's going to turn out to be the Moon Maid, who is wearing artificial wings that you can actually you wear something with sort of like helium on the back. Did they actually say it was helium? Some lighter than air gas and wings, and you can fly. But that part was destroyed, and we're about to meet Na La, the Moon Maid. And so that's the end of that chapter. And I think, as I already mentioned, Orthos spending time with the chief alone, I think, is a pretty big indication that Orthos is going to turn out to be up to something really shifty. But any
Come on,
comments?
brother. trying to rub elbows with all the big shots.
Yeah. So any comments from you guys on this chapter?
I wanted to clarify here, and do correct me if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
Um, where are we? Chapter 5?
Yeah.
These events you described there are in the interior of the moon. Is that
Hmm.
correct?
Yes.
Because down there they've got some semblance of oxygen,
Hmm.
whereas up on the lunar surface there isn't any, or at least hardly any oxygen up there.
Yeah.
So all this is taking place. So when Julian talks about the moon and other heavenly bodies, they the Vagas do not have, or anyone he's talking to, do not have a good view of
Mm.
what you can see from the surface of the moon. So
Yeah.
it's probably a little easier for them to dismiss it.
Mm. Well, it's kind of like David Innes had trouble explaining,
Oh
the
yeah,
outer world to people in Pellucidor because
exactly.
they have no frame of reference at all to even imagine
What you got to do is take a Mayhar with you when you go up to the surface, like even later on,
it.
and the Mayhar's got his eyes wide open and is seeing things it never saw before.
Oh man, can you imagine like accidentally leaving your wife behind at a gas station and driving 100 miles before you realize it's a Mayhar in the seat next to you? It's it's like, man, David, pay attention. It's like, uh, okay. Any other comments on chapter 5?
Slightly goes in the next chapter, but when they described the flying creature coming down and they tore off its wings and the hump off its back, I'm like, holy cow. And when they say that, then we see they take the prisoner up to the family, like the wings have been ripped off and the
Mm,
hump torn off its back. How's it even alive? So I have to jump ahead a little bit until the next chapter explained that was like a gas bag and
yeah.
and wings that were put onto the body. They weren't uh, physically uh, part of the anatomy that helps explain it. But I was just kind of lost in shock.
So, it is a good, in that regards, it is a really good cliffhanger, isn't it?
Mhm.
Okay, chapter 6. We find out that the captive bird creature is Na Ela, the beautiful Moon Maid, who's from the city of Lothi, and to the surprise of absolutely nobody who's ever read a Burroughs novel, she's a princess. She's the daughter of the Jemadar, which is basically the king of the city. She's brought before the chief of the Vagas. Um, she's a prisoner now as well. The tribe continues to go on the move, with Orthus still hanging out with the chief. Julian starts to make friends with Na Ela, um, and he tries to explain the idea of planets to her, and she can't grasp it either. Um, but she almost believes them because there's some ancient myths about such possibilities. So she does have a little bit of a frame of reference for it. She explains how the wings in the gas bag works, and that's going to come back in later chapters to help them out. And she also explains that they can tell time by measuring light through the craters and how it shifts. Um, and they we get to see a battle scene here because this tribe, the Novans, attack another Vagas tribe. They capture the women and eat the dead, and it's really quite a large battle. And a feast is made of the dead, and that's the end of this chapter. Um, so yeah, as I think I mentioned at the beginning, this is why they're not, I don't think they are ageless like they are in Pellucidar. They're not completely ageless. You do eventually get old, but it can take decades or centuries. Um, and because there's no passage of time that you can detect. But here in the moon, there is a passage of time. And so I don't think they would have the same near immortality that Pellucidorians do. He does never mention the lifespan of a moon human, though. So we don't know how long they live. Martians live over 1,000 years. So who knows? Julian eventually marries Na Ela. Hopefully, it's kind of nice to think they got old together rather than her staying young while he got old. That would be awkward. So anyway, that's chapter 6. Any comments from you guys about it?
A couple of things. One, if the Barsoomians stop taking that trip down the Is
Hmm.
uh, after about 1,000 years or so, they might live a little bit longer.
Yeah, well, we occasionally meet the old guy in the atmosphere factory and
Mhm.
Ross Thavis, the mad
Oh yeah.
scientist. So we have elderly Martians who never went took that trip and are well over. They never. I don't think Burroughs ever says how old they are. But yes, you do live more than 1,000 years if you don't take your trip down the River Is to get slaughtered by plant people. So
Um, another point I wanted to make was that the um, Plooster and Barsoom. Yeah, it reminded me. David, our protagonist's discussion with the young lady,
mm,
Julian's discussion with the young lady, reminded me of the getting to know you portion in both the Plooster story and the Barsoom story.
mhm.
That is where he's got this young lady he's enamored with, and he's getting to know her. The dialogue was different. And they covered different topics, of course, but it just reminded me of that quiet moment when they were getting to know each other.
Mhm.
Just like David Ennis getting to know that young lady there, and just like over in Barsoom, John Carter talking with Deja Thoris.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that Burroughs repeats themes to an extent, and he always does it in an entertaining way, and each story is still an individual thing. But the way romance works is almost always the same. You know, they meet and they like each other, and at one point she thinks he's betrayed them, and so on and so forth. That's a very common way for it to happen, and it happens multiple times. And
Mhm.
it's always fun because he gives them individual personalities.
Right,
Um, it's just like, in the Tarzan things, when there's always a point where he's captured or has time to learn the language of whatever lost city he's in before the
right.
story moves on. So he had kind of tricks to his plot that he would use variations of, and was just such a good writer that you notice that he does these tricks, but it doesn't bother you. It doesn't reduce the quality of the story. You're still having fun reading it.
Mhm.
So, any other comments on chapter 6?
Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting. Besides the keynote that the Moon Maid who's the title character here, is introduced, very close to halfway in the book already.
Mm-hmm.
That's just late, but the scene that really stuck in my head was the Vargas soldier who was unhappy about not getting to eat the captives because he's hungry, and so Gavago kills him
Mm-hmm.
and says, "Everyone, jump on him. You can have him for your meal." And he says, "If anyone's still hungry afterwards, just let me know."
Fix that problem. That'll boost
Yeah,
morale.
yeah, because in chapter 7 we learned that Gavago, the chief of the Vagas, keeping her alive because she wants to ransom. So he actually has a rational reason for
Yeah,
wanting to keep her around. Um, but everybody else, all the others are looking at her as like a meat animal. And in fact, in chapter 7, Julian finds out that the humans, the Ugas of the planet, consider the Vagas to be lower animal forms, and they breed them for food. The ones we see later on have been bred so that they're no longer intelligent. But Julian kind of has to adjust his thinking. He doesn't want to eat anything intelligent himself, but he realizes the way this planet works and the culture works is that he can't completely condemn them for doing so. Um, because you don't have a lot of other options. Um, so Orthos talks the chief into giving Na Elah to him, and he tries to forcibly take her, and Julian stops him. So Orthos is once again this fans this hatred for Julian. Um, Julian's dragged outside and he's tied up, and a storm starts. And when he hears Na Ali cry for help, he's actually able to break his bonds. Beats up Orthos again to keep her away from the girl, and they flee while the storm's going on because the Vagas are terrified of the storm, so they're all hunkered down. So they have a chance to get away. So um, Orthos here, if we hadn't guessed it already, he's now revealed to be a total bad guy. There's nothing redeeming about him at all. Um, and I don't think that's a surprise. Burroughs really did give it away pretty overtly when he had Julian think, if I'd known what I knew later, I would have shot him earlier on. But he wants the girl, he wants power, he wants to kill Julian because he doesn't like Julian. So he really does hit all the seven deadly sins, I think. Um, and then the storm and the escape, I think, is a pretty cool action scene, which is, of course, typical of Burroughs. He always wrote great action scenes. But any comments from you guys on chapter 7?
Go ahead, Scott, if you got something.
Uh, Nothing new here except this is one of those where chapters we've talked about before, where there's quite a bit of action there, and then um, Burroughs uses it as a turning point because now Julian with the Moon Maid will be on a separate course,
Mm,
whereas part of the original crew, Orthus, is still in there with the Vagas. So you're
mm.
seeing people who are together for a long time now splitting off, so you can expect you're going to see different parts of their journeys and that they're bound to meet again somewhere.
Yeah. And it is interesting. This is really the last we see of the Vagas in any important way. They've served their purpose in the story, and we're going to be moving on to the Calkers and to other bad guys. So, um, so chapter 8, they head for the mountains because Na Ali is convinced she can eventually find the entrance to Lothe, her home city. Um, Although I'm not so sure she's right, they keep not finding it. There's a fight with a creature called the Torho, where Julian kills it. Um, and Na Ali gives the hint that everybody in the world but Julian can see that she's fallen for him, and that he says, if you'd been killed, I would not have cared to live myself. So, and of course Julian completely misses that because Burroughs heroes are always completely dense when it comes to this sort of thing. Well, of course, I met my wife in church, and I have been told that we were dating for a full year before I knew it. So I can't criticize them. Um, I was asking people to pray about whether I should ask her out, and at least one person said, "I thought you were allowed to talk." So I guess I can't make fun of Julian. I've been in the same situation. Um, They finally find an entrance into a tunnel that's like 20 feet over the edge of a cliff. Um, and they hand make a pole to climb down in it because Na Ali La is curious. Na La, I think I'll call her the Moon Maid. I cannot get her name right. They climb down into it. The pole they make to climb down slips, and Julian just rescues her from falling, and he realizes that he's developing feelings for her. So he's starting to realize he's in love. Um, that's chapter 8. I think it's interesting. He fought this Torho, the creature. There does seem to be fewer dangerous carnivores on Mars than there are on the moon than there are on Mars and Pellucidor, although there still is at least one dangerous carnivore. But you don't run into as many of them apparently as you do in Pellucidor or on Mars or in Tarzan's Africa, where you walk around a bush, you're going to run into something else that wants to eat you. So, but any comments from you guys?
Well, I would say that for anyone who would be writing a moon story in the future, there's probably some elbow room there to create another creature that lives on the other side of the moon that we haven't seen.
Hmm.
But to your
Yeah.
point, I agree that does not seem to be a very large menagerie.
Mm,
I wanted to step back to a moment that I really enjoyed, and it's hit me at least twice, and that is back when the Moon Maid is first making her appearance and she's gliding through the air. She's got her wings going,
mm,
and it's somewhat exotic and from a distance, if your imagination is good, attractive. Okay.
mm,
Um, Burroughs, I think, adds some extra emphasis on the impact of that scene. And I also noticed that again with Swords Against the Moon, when Chris Carey was writing that, he added some emphasis to the young lady coming out of the sky with the wings
mm.
and all that, which I thought was a very nice touch. And I'm thinking I should have looked this up. It seems like in this trilogy there's another instance where there's yet another moon maid or someone coming down from the sky, but I have not taken time to verify that. So don't anybody hold me to it in case that's not true. But anyway, I just thought it was a nice touch and nicely handled in both cases.
I
And I
agree.
did
It was.
make the comment earlier. All right, go ahead.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think the point about fighting the creatures is really good. Earlier they made detour because of the four-legged snake, but like when they're going through the water, if it had been like in one of the African adventures,
Mm,
probably some serpent or crocodile or something, they would have ended up with an extra fight in that. I think Burroughs was more concerned with the construct of the conflicts between the different societies, the different peoples here, when
mm,
he's trying to make his, scientific or science fiction style political commentary here, as opposed to the regular adventure story with the different creatures, whether they be centaurs or elephants or anything else like that. It seemed to be where his energy was going this time.
that's a great point. He had a political metaphor to make with this book. So
Yeah.
he wasn't going to go on tangents. He was going to keep it centered on the exact dangers he wanted in order to do his metaphor to condemn communism. And so that's yeah, no, that I hadn't thought about that, but I think you're exactly right. I think he didn't populate the moon with as many weird creatures as he did Venus and Mars because he wanted to laser focus on the political metaphor. And still did it as a great adventure story. He never makes it boring.
Yes.
But but yeah, he needed to get to that part so he could really make his point.
I agree. That's a great part. I'm glad you
Hmm.
pointed that out. But I tell you, it still doesn't keep me from wanting to get a good look at this four-legged snake. Now, how do you define that? How do you
Yeah,
define that thing?
Yeah,
that
but
was hard to wrap my
yeah,
head around.
Because when
but
I think of the
there,
word snake, there's no legs involved.
mm, but there is room to add more creatures in other fiction. You know, the way who wrote the Mayhars of Pellucidor and Red Axe of Pellucidor? Um,
Jonathan Roy, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, he had his hero pop up to a different place of Pellucidor than Burroughs' character did, and was
Mm-hmm.
able to meet all sorts of weird
Oh yeah,
creatures that we hadn't seen before, and they all fit perfectly.
yeah. And
Will
Pellucida's a
Murray
big place too.
Yeah, Will Murray did the same thing when he sent Tarzan to Mars. He had a
Right.
few new creatures there, but
Right.
Mm.
you had plenty of room on Mars to add new creatures. So you could do the same thing on the moon. So where are we up to? Chapter 9. Um, they follow some tunnels, and eventually the Moon Maid realizes that this isn't the Lethe tunnel. This isn't her hometown. And they see a Calcar, which is a human, but the bad guys who rule most of the planet. So they try to make a getaway. Um, and in the meantime, Julian learns that there is a guy named Kota back at the Moon Maid's home city who has designs to overthrow the Moon Maid's dad and marry her. Um, but they'll get back to that later. Um, they're cornered by some Calcars. There's a cool fight where Julian and the Moon Maid both manage to get some weapons, and they escape back into the tunnels. Um, and they get back to the exit to the crater rim, which is above them, and used a hook pole to get up. Nali gets up. The pole comes loose, I think, and she's hanging on the edge while Julian is trapped 20 feet below her, facing a charging Calcar soldier. So this is definitely an action-packed chapter here, and this is going to separate Julian from Na Ela for quite a few chapters, which isn't an unusual thing in Burroughs novels. But the fight scene here against the Calcars, I think, is an awesome one. Um, it's impossible to rate Burroughs's action scenes because there's so many of them. But um, that this was just a great fight. Um, and then that running right into their escaping and Na Ali dangling from the edge, and that's the last we see her from a while. Is a great cliffhanger. So, comments from you guys on this chapter?
Go ahead, Scott. Nothing from me.
Yeah, basically what you're saying, and again, other stories. This could have been another fight with other types of creatures, but again, it's the people, the pursuers, and the people fighting within themselves without any other outside influences except their environment and stuff. So he didn't give up, like you said. He's not giving up on the action. He's just
Mhm.
concentrating in a different way.
Yeah, because he just wants to get to these guys are just like communists and look how much it stinks.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, so um, chapter 10, Julian's captured by the Calcars. He's taken to the city. They blindfold him and run him through a bunch of halls and chambers to confuse the direction, but he's been trained for this sort of thing. So he's able to keep track of where they are, so he can find his way back out to the entrance later on if he needs to. Um, he's imprisoned with another guy from Lethe from the Moon Maid city called Muga, um, and he finds out the history of this that the Lathians used to have cities all over the moon, and they had this advanced technologies. Um, and then the Calcars began to take over. They had like to basically set up a communistic government. And of course, that, as it was in real life, because Burroughs's criticisms of communism were all based on fact. Um, that it turns out that you have dictatorships, you have cruelty, you have repression, and you have inefficient government where people don't get enough to eat. And all of that has happened. And now Lethe is the only city left on Mars that is free of the Calcars. And the Calcars don't know where the city is. If they ever find out, the Lathians would be in trouble. Um, so Muga and Julian start to plan an escape. They overpower a couple of guards. They do the old like knock out the guards, put on their clothes thing. Um, Julian can find the way out because he remembers the steps and turns they did when they all brought him in blindfolded. And they get to the exit and they're trying to tie spears together to make an escape pole to get up to the cliff rim when they hear pursuers coming up behind them. Um, so this chapter we learn the history of the moon. The Calcars are obviously a metaphor for communists. There's no hiding that. And if you know about world history at all, you would see that right away. And it highlights the brutality and the inefficiency of communism. Um, and then we get into another great action scene. The whole escape from the city is pretty awesome stuff. So comments from you guys?
This is where we find out the Vagos are bred like cattle. So I've got a question. I've got a question for y'all. Would it bother you that you're having a conversation with a Vaga in the morning, and then that same Vaga is being served for dinner that night?
Well, I think any of us coming from Earth, where we frown on cannibalism, is going to be freaked out by that. I would not be comfortable eating that steak at all.
That's fine. I was
Yeah,
just curious.
yeah. But the Vagas that they're keeping have been bred so they're not really that intelligent anymore, right? So are they? But I
Sure.
don't know if they're down to the level of cows. And does that make a difference? I mean, we don't have to worry about cows once having had a high civilization. Um, whereas if you had a Vagos for a meat animal and it's not intelligent anymore, but you knew it was once, I think I'd be a little queasy about that as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not ready to eat another quote unquote person, but there
Mhm.
are a lot of animals and pets I like better than other people.
Okay. So if it's a choice between your dog and your neighbor, who would you eat?
I wouldn't eat either one.
Talk about indigestion.
Oh man.
I'd
Okay.
like to jump in and also say too that Mogo I was a character that I'm not sure exactly what Burroughs did, but I liked him right from the start. Maybe it's because
Mm,
he's a prisoner already, and he figured that when Julian came in, well, if this guy's a prisoner, he's got to be a friend of mine. If because he can't, if he's an enemy of the other,
mm,
tribe. But he's just very open. He goes like, "So, who are you and where are you from?" It just seems very open, and
yeah.
I enjoyed the character.
He reminds me a little of Kantos Khan from Barsoom, although he doesn't become the same regular friend
Yeah,
that Kantos did for John Carter. Um,
You mean
But
is
yeah, he's
Cantos
got the
can light?
he's got. I'm sorry.
Is Cantos can light?
Yeah, kind of. That's a good way of saying it. So, but he's got that same vibe, and it's kind of a shortcut way. I think actually is a shortcut way of making you like a character.
Yeah.
Um, making him sympathetic and making him an ally, and then you're just drawn to him. You like him. I mean,
You
I
don't want
always
to eat them.
right. You don't want to eat him. It's like, um, so yeah. So the two make a pretty good team. They do an effective escape. Um, so chapter 11, um, Julian finally realizes, hey, wait a minute, low gravity, I can jump really high. So he puts a rope around himself and jumps up to the edge of the cliff, and then he pulls Moga on with him. And Moga, unlike Na Ila, knows how to get home. Um, and they find the city, and Julian's worried about Na Ila's fate. He doesn't know what happened to her, and they finally get to Lothi. He's brought to Kota, who is the person who wants to overthrow the current government and marry the Moon Maid. But he's treated as an equal. What's interesting is that Kota is not just a mustache twirling villain. He's, he seems almost likable. Um, and Julian accepts his hospitality, but it's in order to get information to help Na-Ila's father, Sagrath. Um, Kota's skeptical of the story of Earth and space travel again, but you can't really blame him for that. Um, and this chapter ends with Julian going on to meet Sagrath, the ruler of the city. So, yeah, that's actually my main comment from this. Is it's interesting that Kota is a villain, but he's not a total scumbag, and he's not overtly evil. He's
He's a
not having
smart
people.
politician.
He's a smart politician, yeah. Um, but if there's no reason like if you just met him and you didn't have the whole backstory of him trying to overthrow the government, you would probably be thinking, hey, here's another likable character and a probable ally. But that's probably smooth politician talk right there. So who
Yeah.
knows, because he is going to be perfectly willing to do rebellions and assassinations later on. So, but any comments from you guys on chapter 11?
This is where we find out the Calcars have 337 cities,
I think so, yeah.
and
And
it's,
there's
it's
one
still.
left.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and one left with the Lathians or whatever so.
Right. So the Calcars are downright greedy then.
Hmm.
The Lathians have one, and they have over 300 cities.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to check
Yeah.
those numbers.
Well, when you're a dictator, you want to rule over everybody.
Well,
And
I reckon you do, but good gosh.
we're not going to say, Napoleon wouldn't have said, well, there's one city left in England. I'll just let them be. He would have taken over everything.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Okay, I rest my case.
Mm. Okay, any other comments?
I like how Julian takes the name Julian Fit and conveys the idea that he might be a prince or leader,
Mm.
because a lot of people probably go, oh, I'm really no one, because you don't want to appear to be a danger to them or something. But with his military raising, military school as a child, I'm sure, et cetera, and the bearing that he carries and the idea of rank, he's going with the idea that if he is a prince, they're not bound to hold him as ransom for something other reason or consider him a danger. Here, since he came in with Mogo, they're going to consider him maybe an esteemed guest. So he's taking that chance, and which turns out to be a smart thing to do.
Mm-hmm. It does. So yeah, I mean, I like how palace intrigue is just effectively weaved into this story, and we get more suspense and all of that because of that. And it's just a fun story. Um, and we have to remember something. We have to give an award to the story. Remember, we had the Bertha Kircher best action scene. So we'll decide that at the end. Remember, we have to pick our best action
What is
scene.
that?
I forgot because we were on our our hiatus, I'd forgotten that we had instituted that award a couple of podcasts back.
Is
So
there anything else we've forgotten?
no, I think that's it so far. We did. I forgot to say that for these chapter summaries, I am using the erblist.com summary of this novel to remind myself of what happens in every chapter so I don't leave off anything. So the great work done in that book project on ERB List, where they have chapter summaries of every one of his novels, have always been of great help to us, and it's great help again this time, and I appreciate it. And I should have remembered to credit them at the beginning of the podcast. We are out of practice, aren't we? Okay, chapter 12. We're coming up at the end here. Julian's taken to meet Sagrath, and he sees that his wife and daughter, so Na Ela is there, but she doesn't show any hint of recognition, and Julian's feelings are hurt. When he tries to see her alone later on, she's cold and haughty, I believe is the way it's phrased. She mistakenly believes that he's helping Khotan, which is a typical, I mean, it's so typical for at some point for the heroine in an ERB novel to think that the hero has done something wrong. And she'll learn better otherwise.
That happened to David Ennis and Diana
Yeah.
Duke. She got mad
Yes.
at him over he didn't
And
know why she was mad.
And it briefly happened to with John Carter and Deja Thoris.
Yeah, yes,
And
it did.
she inadvertently insulted her. He inadvertently insulted her because he didn't know how the customs worked.
Dot the I's and cross the T's.
Yeah. But Julian gains the confidence of Kota's spies, and he finds that there's a coup about to be launched. Well, at first it's supposed to be 10 years in the future. But he later learns it's going to happen sooner. Because Kota is working with the Kalkars, who are pressuring him to like join with a creature from another world, who obviously is Orthus, who is now providing the Kalkars with advanced weaponry. So it's going to happen soon. And Julian's wondering what he should do with all this information. He also, during this time, learns to use the wings in the airbag, and that'll be a key plot point later. So chapter 12, there's a lot of palace intrigue, and Burroughs really does use this very effectively to build up tension. And then the Kalkars are involved again, and obviously Orthos is involved somehow. And so there's not a lot of overt action here, but the tension, Burroughs brilliantly builds the tension, and we know everything's going to explode into action soon. And he's setting this up beautifully in these chapters, I think. Any comments from you guys?
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, this is the chapter. Of course, we know we're on the lip of the, if you want to call it the third scene 1, 2, 3, or when movies are drawn out or dramatic arcs and stuff. This is where we see in other novels too that Burroughs takes. He's loading the powder keg here.
Yeah, he is.
There doesn't have to be a lot of action. He's showing this is happening. It's like, there's going to be a bomb on the bus. Oh no, are the people going to be on the bus? He's loading that powder keg, which Hitchcock was great at doing in movies. This stuff's happening. It's coming up. How's it all going to play out?
This is Yosemite Sam being in a dark room and lighting a match and realizing he's in the powder magazine. So,
this is Wile E. Coyote going to the Acme Company.
Yes, it is. Apparently, they're going to release the movie where he's suing Acme. So a live action cartoon mesh.
I wish I would.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so chapter 13. Julian goes to warn Sagoth about the upcoming coup. Na Ela calls Julian a traitor, but then the assassins appear and Julian fights alongside Sagrath, which makes Na Ela aware that no, he's not a traitor. The Sagarth is killed. Julian and the Moon Maid escape. She asks forgiveness for doubting him. They come up with a plan to rally the Imperial Guard, who are always loyal because they don't know who else they can trust. And they actually take control of the throne room, and they have kind of like a last stand fight there against Kota's men. They're outnumbered, but they got doors they can defend, and there's a huge battle. and um, unfortunately the population has heard about all this, and they declare Kota to be their leader. They go with the wrong guy. Um, Not Ali wants to surrender, but Julian manages to kill Kota in a sword fight. Um, and then the situation abruptly changes when the Kalkars show up and start bombing the city with mortars. They've got these advanced artillery that Orthos has been supplying them. And Orthos sends in a message that says they'll spare the city if Na'ila marries him. And she rejects the offer, and she tries to gather the people together to give them a speech. So, chapter 13, lots of actions, assassinations, rebellions, sword fights, mortar shells. This is an action-packed, beautifully done adventure action scene. It also advances the story. Um, we get major characters, and Sagroth and Kota are killed, which the story's coming to an end. So he's kind of getting rid of the side characters. So Orthos becomes the center of attention as the main bad guy. But comments from you guys?
I will say that when the population, the civilians, started
Mm,
rooting for the bad guys, my heart
mm,
just sank when I saw that because I'm not accustomed to that happening in a Burroughs group or Burroughs
yeah,
book. It did have
yeah.
a twist did not anticipate, I'll say that.
Mm. Of course, we don't know enough about how day-to-day politics works there. Maybe
True.
Kota was a better ruler than Sagroth, or would have been. But who knows?
Right,
But
right.
yeah, that was kind of like if the Julian and the Moon Maid are thinking if we can rally the people, hey, we're good, and then the people go with the other guy. That
Time to
would
get
be
out of
quite.
town.
That was quite a downer for them.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I think it's pretty easy to see why I'd probably call this my favorite chapter in the book.
Yeah, it's a wonderful chapter.
Yeah.
So, um, so chapter 14 is the last chapter. The Kalkars storm the city. Um, they're repelled initially, and then the Kalkars start using hand grenades. So they got the mortar shells, now they got getting hand grenades. Um, Julian and Na-Elah, showing really terrible timing, declare their love for each other. Um, they discover that her mom has committed suicide. The surviving city population is like leaping to their death. So the city's gone. Julian and Na-Elah find the wings in the gas bags. They get away. They get to an island as the gas bags start to lose buoyancy, and they're there for quite a while until they see the Barsoom flying by because Ensign Norton used his friendship with Orthus to learn how to use the to fix the engines, and they fly by. They have to. Julian has to desperately fly after them, but he manages to get close enough for them to see him. And they find out it's the year 2036, so they've been 10 years since they left Earth. And uh, they head back to Earth. I assume that Na-Elah would have to acclimatize herself to the higher gravity on Earth, but
Right.
they don't get far enough to deal with that because that's the end of the story. And Julian the Third, who is telling this story because he remembers his future self, Julian the Fifth, says that eventually he'll tell the story about Julian the Ninth, and that'll be the story we encounter in the Moon Maid, um, which we will talk about in our next episode. So that's the ending. It's really an ending. I mean, it's part of a trilogy, so it's not the end of the story because this would be probably his most downer ending if it weren't for that. Because, the entire city of the only good guy city left on the moon is wiped out, and the Kalkars are ruling everything. And that's kind of a downer. And, of course, we have to wait for the next two ones, which will run across what, a couple of thousand years of time, right? And but eventually the good guys will win again. But this one, in a way, it's one of the few times where a Burroughs novel has ended where the bad guy isn't defeated at the end because he's setting up the story for the sequels.
It's a continues.
Yeah, it's to be continued.
But
So
We kind of clipped off ending on it. Yeah.
yeah, but he knew where he wanted to go next. Um, with the story. So So he does, yeah, he does end it fairly quickly here, but I think he ends it in a satisfying manner.
Mm.
He had set up in advance how they were going to get away with the wings. So it's not like he just pulled that out of nothing. It was established, so it makes perfect sense. And finding out that Norton was secretly learning from Orthos how to fix the engines was also a pretty cool idea. So he foreshadowed everything that happened. So nothing seems contrived the way it ends. It all he had set everything up that he needed to.
So if he had put more details and more guts in there, that story would not have fit in this. And I'm
Yeah.
holding up a paperback book edition um, from Ace, I think. Um, and it's just the right size for
Hmm.
that story and just the right size for a good read. And
Hmm.
it's part of the paperback uh, explosion that occurred in the 50s into the 60s and 70s that put Burroughs back in the spinner rack.
Hmm. Yeah, one of the best things that ever happened for our culture was Ace Books.
Yep,
Although were they the ones who weren't getting permission to do that? They were just doing it?
that's my understanding. Yes.
Yeah. So, but we're glad they did. Um, and there is, by the way, the Frazetta girls, his daughters, granddaughters rather, have a YouTube channel, and they did one recently about his ERB work,
Mhm.
which I would recommend people watching. So it's just
Thank you
Frazetta
mentioned
girls
that.
on YouTube. Um, but yeah, so that's the end of this story. We do have to select a Bertha Kircher Best Action Scene Award. I would nominate the fight that Julian had with the Calcors when he and the Moon Maid were cornered, and they fight their way out of that room and make a run for it. And the other nomination I would make would be that last battle in the palace in the chapter 13. Um, first fighting alongside with Sagroth, and then after he's killed, rallying the Imperial Guard and holding, doing that last stand fight against the Kotas forces in the palace throne room. Those are my two nominees. Which one would you pick as the best, or do you have another action scene you like even better?
I would suggest the scene where we first encounter, which I referred to earlier. We first encounter the Moon Maid.
Hmm.
She's got her wings going, and she's hovering over, not hovering, falling gently through the battle zone up in the air. She's
Mm.
at risk of being shot down right there,
Hmm.
and it's a magnificent sight.
Okay.
To me, it's a magical almost.
Okay.
See something like that.
Ah.
Now, I don't have strong feelings. If I'm fine with your selections. Just I have a personal thing for the Moon Maid.
So, Scott, what would you pick as for the Bertha Kircher Best
Well,
Action Scene Award?
with the wink and a nod, I have to go to the moment when the Volga's complaining about being hungry, but that's not much of a battle there. Um, uh, the chapter 13,
Hmm.
when he's in there, and it's the whole Robin Hood, Maid
Hmm.
Marian,
Yeah.
and Gary Cooper and Roy
Hmm.
Rogers coming to rescue thing that I love. He, the romantic part of it. He comes in, she's like, "Oh, this is who you really are," and falls
Hmm.
for him. And, unfortunately, her dad gets killed, but they fall. He's like, no, I'm a good guy, and watch out because we got assassins. Get your swords, and they start, doing that'd be my favorite part, and that'd be my and the
Okay.
chapter, that battle, whole
Well,
battle that leads
I can
into.
I can back that up. So we will give the Bertha Kircher Best Action Scene Award for this novel to Chapter 13. Although I still maintain, um, I know your dad's was just killed and we're about to die in battle, but by the way, I'm in love with you. It's just terrible timing. But but it is a great action scene, and I did love it too. So there we give the Bertha Kircher Award. Um, so any final remarks? I know that we'll talk about the other books in the trilogy, and I have to admit I haven't read Swords of the Moonmen yet. Where does that take place in the chronology of all this?
It's after it.
After this one or after the trilogy?
I think about this. It's after the trilogy.
Okay, so it's pretty much in the far future. Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I, don't hold me to that. It's been a long time since I've looked at it.
Okay. I'm a little behind in reading the new stuff. When I got to get back to it. And there is a box set Centennial edition out now of these novels, which Jess, I know you have, and
Mhm.
just looks magnificent. Um,
Oh,
so so and um, there was the let's see, how far did the online comic strip get with adapting this? Did they ever get past? They haven't done a new one in a while, so I don't think
the
they got
online,
past the first novel.
I don't think the online comic strip. You're talking about the
The ERB,
Comic
yeah,
book.
comic,
yeah.
yeah.
I don't think the comic strip tackled this one.
There was a Moon Maid comic strip amongst the online stuff, but I think it stopped. So I think it only progressed partway around the story before. They've had
Is
a
it
couple.
Moon Maid or Moon Man?
It was Moon Maid.
Oh,
It was
okay.
this one.
I know
Um,
there's something, but I couldn't remember which.
yeah, but I can't remember. They haven't run one in a while, and I can't remember where they left off.
There's
There's a
supposed to be.
couple of times in the online comic strips, which are brilliant, and I would recommend anyone who likes Burroughs to subscribe to it because it's not
I agree.
expensive. But there have been a couple of times where they've started a strip and then it ended for whatever reason without being completed. Um, but the stuff that goes on, I'm loving the Tarzan and the Time Traveler from H.G. Wells storyline they're doing now in one of the strips. So, so anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. Sorry there.
That's
Uh,
quite all right. My,
That's a good idea to plug the comic strips
oh, I
online
agree.
from
I agree.
yeah,
ERB.
it is. It
My,
is.
my, my understanding that the ERB comic strips that you're referring to was going to be discontinued because they did wrap up some of the stories rather hastily.
Yeah,
However, some of the other stories are still getting new panels.
yeah.
I
Well,
don't know what's
they
going on there.
well, some of them they've continued the story on after the novel would have ended.
Oh
They
yeah,
did
most definitely.
they did that with they did some interesting stuff with the Lost Continent until they did
Yes.
come up with an ending for that, and they've done it with Land of Time Forgot and um, others. But their adaptation of the John Carters is up about halfway through Gods of Mars, and their adaptation of the original Tarzan novels have covered Tarzan of the Apes and Jungle Tales,
Hmm.
and is partway into Return of Tarzan.
Hmm.
And they're still, and then the Roy Thomas written one with original stories is in the middle of a Tarzan and the Time Traveler from H.G. Wells in the future helping the Eloi fight the Morlocks.
Now that's the one I was not aware of, and that's
Yeah.
always is something that appeals to me. So I'm glad you
Okay.
mentioned.
Yeah. Go back and take a look because if you're subscribing, you can get all the back ones and you can
Okay.
read through the story. But he did one where he went to Pellucidor, makes friends with one of the lions from there who follows him home, and then he gets caught up in the time travel with when the time traveler's machine is going by, ends up in the far future. So,
Comic strip too.
mm, so okay. Anyway, any more final remarks about the Moon Maid before we
Well,
close it
I've
up?
got I've got a couple books I was going to mention here. I've mentioned this one a couple times already, and just in case you're not aware of our listeners and viewers are not aware of where to get this, and that is Swords Against the Moon Man by Christopher Paul Carey. It is a continuation of these Moon stories, and I highly recommend it. It's just very well written, and this is in the Wild Adventure series, and you can find this at ERB Inc. either at their website, um, Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated website, or at at their Amazon website. So that's the Swords Against the Moon Man.
Ebook too. You can get an ebook too.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can.
Hmm.
The other thing, talking about the Moon trilogy has been revised and updated and had things added to it and had things taken out of it over time for various reasons. Um, the most complete, one of the most complete editions is entitled and I've used this for research myself, is the expanded Moon Maid. I'm holding it up to the camera, which really doesn't matter, but the
Yeah.
expanded Moon Maid, and that was published by ERBville Press. That's ERBville Press out of Wyoming. So if you're looking for a complete copy of all the Moon action, deleted scenes, and that kind of thing, the expanded Moon Maid. I think this is a Roy Crinkle cover. A young lady on a centaur in place of the Vaga, taking a ride across the world there. Uh, another thing I would mention And again, this one might, while that expanded Moon Maid was the most comprehensive one, it is entirely possible, and I don't know the answer to this, that the Moon Maid book produced by ERB, um, produced
The
by
the
Jim Gerlach's
the centennial box set of the whole
Centennial
trilogy.
Edition box set. Yeah,
Hmm.
that thing is as big as a tractor trailer, and so it's probably pretty thorough too. And
Hmm.
it might be a little costly, but if you're into the Moon series, it's certainly a fine book to have. And
Okay.
that has the same picture on it that I was referring to earlier of the young lady riding on the back of a centaur. And
Yeah,
this is probably the
that
Roy
looks
Campbell version.
that looks like Roy Klinkle to me, just from what I can see.
Mhm.
So, um, okay, cool. Yeah, and please buy stuff. And we still have a store where nobody ever buys anything, but I will post in the notes, I will post the link to our store, where you can buy, all sorts of ERB shirts and cups and mouse pads and phone cases and whatever with images by my friend Ben Alvarez, who did some great art for this with the permission of the ERB people, including, Tars Tarkas and Woola and Tarzan and all of that are on these images. So buy stuff and make us wealthy. Um, and I know actually from several podcasts I follow, I know getting people to buy your swag is pretty hard. So we're in good company in having a store that almost nobody ever buys anything from. When we have sold stuff, it's almost always Woola. He's our popular sale, but that's only been a couple of sales. So um, and the link for that will be in the show notes. And I think that's it. So, um, you thank you everybody. Once again, my name is Tim DeForest. I have a blog, comics, radio, and other old time and other cool stuff. And you can find links to my books on Amazon there. And I'm going to have an article in a magazine called Popular Culture Review about Jack Kirby's run on Our Fighting Forces comic while he was at DC that I just sent to the editor the other day. That thing drove me nuts trying to research
Congratulations.
it. Thank you.
That
Um,
was one of my many favorite comics way back when I was a little feller.
yeah, it's impossible. It was just so hard to research that because nobody's ever, it's such a footnote in his career from the point of view of most people. Nobody's ever written about it.
Mhm.
I was going nuts trying to research it, but it's done. And so that's Popular Culture Magazine. I have no idea what issue it's coming out in. But I will post it when it's available. And yeah, and once again, I'm doing what's called booktube videos, talking about books I read. And I have a small audience. I don't really expect it to ever be anything but small, but I enjoy talking about my books. And if anybody wants to listen, or send me an email through the Edgar mailbag thing if you want a PDF copy of everything I've read during 2025, that'll be ready at the end of December. And I have superb taste in books, so my book reading will be the salvation of Western civilization, I think. So, okay. And Jess, you want to plug anything?
Well, certainly I want to mention my Facebook discussion group for the love of all things Edgar Rice Burroughs. That's where you'll find me pert near 24/7. We're talking ERB and having a great time over there. And
Mhm.
we have a good selection of artwork, and we have a good selection of questions to ponder. And hope that you can come join us for the love of all things Edgar Rice Burroughs.
And this is Scott Stewart signing off for the night. It was a good show. I enjoyed it. Two
Mhm.
compliments for my compatriots here. First, Jess, love the Hawkman T-shirt.
Oh,
I'm a
thank you.
Hawkman fan, and also for Tim, I thought it was really cool that I don't have the dinero to buy the whole book yet, but that super giant Superman book that came out at $200, the fact that you were quoted in it, I thought was really cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
I appreciate your pointing that out. I did not know I was quoted in it until you sent me that page. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that was
So
really a neat
yeah,
discovery.
that's an oversized book called Superman: A Definitive History, which I think came out last year. I've seen it now. I got it for the library in which I work because I can't afford it
Oh,
either.
cool.
So, but I've actually seen the reference to me.
I'm glad you
So,
mentioned it. I didn't know that quote was in there. I don't have that book. I've been eyeing it for some time, but I don't have that one yet. But it's the kind of thing I would certainly
mhm.
get.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it actually is a really cool book. And I believe that's it. So this was fun. I know we had to do a hiatus, but I've missed doing this. It's always fun talking about Burroughs with you guys, and I always appreciate your comments and your insights. So thank you for that. And we will be signing off now, and I'll be talking to you guys soon about scheduling the next episode so we can do the Moon Men. And everybody remember our trivia question. During the mutiny aboard the Fuwalda, who saves John Clayton's life? And email us the answer to be in for the prize. Do it by November 10th, 2025. And that's it. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Thank you.